Good Tuesday to you, everybody. Incom 731. Welcome to week, boom, 8. We are now officially at the, that's a calls for a collar pop, at the halfway mark for the semester. And, a little bit of coffee. Congratulations to you all. So I'm back again, your sufficiently caffeinated communication instructor with some information for you about week 8, that is this week, and review of the questions from week 7, that is last week. Okay, for this week, we are starting a new book. Eric Schmidt and Jared Cohen's The New Digital Age. This book was tremendously influential on me. I read it back in 2013, I think, 2014. And at the same time that I was reading it, I'm flipping through it right now. At the same time that I was reading it, I had also spent, 2014. I had also spent the couple of years before traveling around the world doing humanitarian work, seeing social media being used in a lot of places in a lot of interesting ways. And so, what these authors were up to resonated with me by way of experience. But some of their analysis of effects and their conclusions of effects that would come about from this new digital age, they did not resonate with my experience. And I said, hey, I haven't experienced the whole world. Maybe this is an outlier, my experiences. So as I began my PhD program at Regent University, I decided to construct a large scale experiment, an investigation, a quantitative research project, and make it the center of my dissertation that would put some of their theories to the test. All right. Now I'm not gonna discuss what that exercise was and what my conclusions were, because I don't want to bias your outcome as you read the book. All right. I'm going to leave that up to you. We'll discuss that as we go along. So for this week, read the introduction, and then I know in the module I say only chapters 1 and 2, but when you pick up a book, you want to read the introduction. Okay? Read the introduction to A New Digital Age and get started with that. All right. And then, as always, answer the discussion questions and respond to 3 of your classmates, and continue to work on your technology tool because it is due on October 28th. All right. So that's what we're doing for this week. Some, what's going on backstory. I am working to finish all of your papers. I think some of you have them. Again, remember that whatever you score, if you make the changes that I recommend and you continue to do things that I say, hey, keep doing that. If you score higher on the final paper, which isn't due till way clear into December, you get your score raised on this exercise. So if you get like an 80 and you get a 90, I'll raise your score up to a 90 for the first paper. If your score goes down on the second paper, the final whole thing, as opposed to the first part, I don't drop your score. Okay. Also, if you see a note on there saying, hey, let's talk, nobody's in trouble. This is just me wanting to give you some feedback. Okay. All right. So look forward to that. I've had a real stack of them, not just our class, but another class to grade. So I'm moving through them as quickly because I want to give these things a good look. And I always make sure to get through and leave you at least a month, that is all of November, to finish the second part, which is much shorter, and to make the changes. So plenty of time for you. Focus on your technology tool. Okay. So for discussion questions, I will be grading all of weeks 1 through 7 throughout this week. If you're like, oh, we haven't seen any feedback from the discussion questions, that's because I usually don't. I mean, I monitor what you say, but I stay out of the discussion unless I see something that needs to be tweaked. And I almost never, ever, never do that within the context of the discussion section. I will contact that person directly. Say, hey, you got to go a little bit easy, or don't be offended by this or stuff like that. And I've done that. And if you've heard from me, you know who you are. No worries. That's just us doing class. Okay. But I will be grading all of those. So if you have not completed all of the discussion questions and responded to feedback from your classmates, you must do so. And if like we're talking about week 2 or 3 and you didn't respond to the number of people that you needed to, and you do now, you're going to receive considerably diminished amount of points for that, as opposed to those people who did it on time. Because look, a discussion that you jump into 2 or 3 weeks later, that's not a discussion. That's just somebody going, hey, thanks for the contribution. And that's the other thing. By way of points, I'm pretty lenient with the assignment of points. Just about any substantive level of engagement, except, and that's the keyword substantive, except the, hey, good point. Oh, I never thought about it like that. Thanks for chiming in. You're not getting any points for that. All right. If you sound like a used car salesman or a spam email to me when I read your interaction with your classmates, we're going to give no points for that. Okay. But if, as always, you have any questions about the scoring and the evaluation that I give, come and talk to me. I'm always here. Okay, let's take a look at last week. The questions, what you had to say, see what we can add. Okay, kick it around a little bit. And so, you finished macro economics. All right. So question number 1, what is Kiva? Given the scale of poverty worldwide, can initiatives like it solve the global problem of access to capital? Sean, you went first, so let's take you first. In the book, Kiva is described as an internet-based marketplace that could help individuals give loans to entrepreneurs who might otherwise be able to get one. And I'll chime in on this, not just Kiva, but the whole concept here in just a bit, because I've been involved in this process that is getting capital into places where normally there isn't for some time. It would provide loans to individuals in the developing world, such as a goat herder, a fishmonger, a cattle farmer, a restaurateur, and 3 others, all looking for some capital to expand their business, etc. This allows for business to grow and collaborate efforts, etc., etc., etc. Okay. For many, they are unable to get their business off the ground due to no access to capital, but with Kiva, they're able not only to fund someone who sees something in them that the banks might not, okay, but they're unable to find lenders who believe in them in person, not just looking for figures on a paper. This can help some businesses grow and thrive. Okay, that's good, Sean, but you didn't answer the last part of the question. And I'm not mentioning that to pick on you. I'm saying that when we get to the final exam, I'm going to be drawing it from questions exactly like this. And I'm going to ask you to explain why or why not this could actually put a dent in the problem. All right. So be prepared to articulate that, and then give evidentiary, like this is what we see, based on your readings. I mean, you're not going out and doing research on all these questions to back up your answer. Okay, so let's go to Michael. Michael defines it, Kiva as peer-to-peer lending, et cetera. But when you're a single mom with no financial support, your electricity is about to get shut off, you'll do anything to have to keep the lights on. Something like this could be a huge asset for low-income families. It may not be a cure-all for the various elements of global access to capital. Still, it could certainly be a viable solution and would benefit the poor, giving them a fair chance to improve their situation. Okay, so Michael says, maybe it could. Okay. Okay, let me chime in on this. Now I'm not saying that Kiva is not going to do this, make a dent in worldwide poverty. That's not what I'm about to tell you. I'm skeptical that access to capital alone, by itself, not a loan, like with an A, but a loan with an O-N-E, solely, that's what I meant, is going to solve the problem. Why do I say that? First of all, experienced based data. I have worked in humanitarian media and in humanitarian aid and humanitarian financing for like 20 years now. And I've noticed some patterns as I've worked. Yes, lack of access to capital is a problem. And it's not banks really they're at the problem. Sean, you wrote that Kiwi, they're able not only to find someone who sees something in them that banks might not see, but they'll find their lenders who believe in them as a person, not just looking at figures on a paper. Okay. It is a common misconception that somehow, looking at the figures, at the quantitative data, doesn't look at the person. A lot of what we do in the behavioral sciences, and that means in communication, is quantitatively based. That is, we're taking a look. I'm looking for a pen and a pencil. We're taking a look at and we're evaluating the data on a bell curve or some sort of statistical graph. Doesn't always have to be a curve. Okay. I'm just drawing a graph here. So let me give you an example. All right. All right. What banks and financial institutions do, I mean, the reason whether they're global or local, the reason that they stay in business is that they use data to make a determination as to who will be able to pay and who will pay and who won't. And then they plot that data on a number of sophisticated graphs, much more than this. It's a very simplified graphic of the explanation. Okay, and the graph would look like something like this. So over here, we have behavioral characteristics, B. And down here, we have payback, this line, whether the loan is going to be paid back. And over here, we have likelihood that they will pay, likelihood that they will not pay. And one of the things that we find that banks find is as the behavioral characteristics go up like this, the likelihood that they will pay back goes up. As the behavioral characteristics goes down, the likelihood that they will not pay back goes down. That's by and large, not everyone, especially when you get out into the world, and there's a lot more that goes into getting access to capital than the evaluation of payback or no payback. It's tribal, it's political, it's do you belong to the right group or are you subscribing to the right ideology? Are you voting for the right candidate? There is a lot of precursors placed on access to capital in the developing world that has nothing to do with the ability to pay back. That is a genuine problem. But, and we hear this a lot here in our country, but this idea that humanitarian organizations see things in people, and I'm not picking on you, Sean. I'm just giving you the raw data from lots of years of experience. This idea that financial institutions pick on people they don't see the possibility is just not true. It's not borne out by the data. So back to why access to capital in and of itself is not going to solve global poverty, that is, or just the application of money. Let's start with our own country as a test case. All right. If you take a look at the amount of money we've spent on the war on poverty, which we actually, put in as a phrase, used as a phrase, although it's a colloquialism, it's like Obamacare or something for the Affordable Care Act. The amount of money spent, which is in the billions, versus the index of poverty that has moved since that time, which is in the single digits. suggests, not just suggest, demonstrate that throwing money into a problem is not the primary solution because it doesn't address the primary problem. And the primary problem, and it's really problems, usually a cluster of problems, is behavioral. How it is that people make decisions and what, experiences or assumptions or expectations or prejudice within the culture drive them to these decisions, keep them locked in to making these decisions. So we globally, we throw trillions and trillions of dollars at poverty. Nationally, we expend billions and billions. Now we've raised the material standard of living for the poor. That is, there's lights, there's food, there's TV, there's cellular phones, but we have little impacted the actual rate of poverty, this percentage of the population, over the course of the, 40 something years since the Lyndon Johnson initiative of the War on Poverty. Now, I don't say this to say we shouldn't be trying to do things to impact poverty, whether locally or globally. No, that's not the point. The point is that we need to be attentive to the right things in order to attack a problem. Okay. Specifically, back to this issue, and then we'll move on to the next question. One of the things that I find goes wrong, it doesn't work right. Maybe that's another way to put it. With the attempts to affect poverty, is that many of them attack the symptom rather than the cause. So they look at a global population in a region, a global population, somewhere outside the United States, and they say, "Yo, Lordy, look at that! My goodness, that population is lacking money. They're poor. So the solution to the lack of money, the poverty, is money." Okay, and then they throw money into the solution. Okay, it's like say an infection. If somebody has a really high fever due to a, let's say, staph infection, the bacteria Staphylococcal, which can be very serious. Yeah, you have to treat the symptom. You have to get the fever down because the symptom can be highly problematic. So yes, in a region in which there's high poverty, you have to put something in to treat the symptom, that is capital. But you can't solve a problem by treating the symptom. You can solve a problem by treating the cause. So you have to go in and say, okay, why is capital not accumulated? Why doesn't business thrive? Well, okay, if its access to capital is bottlenecked, is choked off by ethnic and political or regional restrictions, and there's a lot of those in the globe. You don't belong to this tribe. Whether it's theocratic or ideological or ethnic. Okay, so you're Sunni instead of Shia Muslim, or you're Eritrean instead of Ethiopian, or whatever. Okay, yeah, that chokes off access to capital. But once you get around that and you treat the symptom, okay, well, what else is causing the lack of accumulation of capital and the development of business in this culture? And I can tell you from many years of experience, almost all of the time, I've found that a reason is that there's a lack of understanding of how a business works. How do you set up a business? How do you evaluate a business? How do you set a goal? What do you got to do with a market in terms of distribution? How do you measure deliverables? How do you budget? Okay, so just putting money into the problem or at the problem, Kiva or anything else, not going to solve the problem. Okay, that's I'm drawing that from global experience. Okay, question number 2. That's enough of that. Let's see. Can bloggers exert pressure on despotic rules? I guess it's supposed to be ruler, sorry for the typo, sufficient to bring about more freedom and openness? Support your answer with a link to a scholarly article. Sean, okay, you went first here. Let's take you first. Bloggers can exert influence if given the opportunity. It's it is all based on the access that is given to them from the country that they're reporting from. If the government restricts or even shuts down the access to the internet, then bloggers will have a difficult time in delivering their message. For countries that still allow access, then bloggers can help raise awareness of freedom. Cyber activism, virtual interactivity transiting across social networks have consolidated the perspective and conceptuality of rebellious young or youth and equip them with a spacious arena to sharpen their innovative creativity, strengthen their sanguineous I clearly need more coffee. Perspicacities and deepen their political consciousness. I mispronounced that word. Empowering their ideological stamina. And then here you have the citation, Taborn, 2023. Okay, during the Arab Spring, etc., etc. And here's a citation: the rise of cyber activism, digital disobedience during the Arab Spring. Okay. Good. Good response. Again, now drawing on my own experience and looking at the sort of the digital landscape, I'm less and less convinced that bloggers, and I'm not saying that the medium can't be used to bring pressure, but that bloggers can do that. And the problem is exactly as you point out, Sean, that if the bloggers are savvy enough to be able to figure out how to use this medium, and this is one of the areas that I think Tapscott and Williams, they touch on it, but they don't give it its proper due. That if the dissenters are smart enough to do this, then the despots are despots aren't dumb. I mean, there are some that are foolhardy, but this sort of caricature of the idiot but ferocious dictator is just that. It's a caricature. And the other disadvantage, besides if they can figure out how to use the technology to suppress, the despot will figure out how to use the technology to suppress. The other significant deficit between the two, the blogger and the despot, is short of outright violence, incited by, coordinated by, and put forward by the bloggers. Most people, and this is what we mean, sort of implicit in bloggers, they have this moral safety brake that goes off that stops them from doing things that cause harm and death and real problems. Despots don't always have that. I mean, the regime in Iran is very astute at using the internet to find dissenters and then locking them up. China, they're absolute masters at using social media, posing as dissidents, implanting spyware to track behavior, developing social scores that have to be listed before you can go anywhere, and then finding dissenters and locking them up, and in some cases, executing them and then selling their organs. And what blogger is going to do that? Not many. So, can it bring pressure? Oh, yeah, it certainly can. Can it bring pressure without the expectation of counter pressure that may overcome it? That's the question. Okay, that doesn't mean we don't use the technology, but it doesn't mean, what it does mean is it's not going to all flow one way in terms of its effect. Okay, question number 3. Of the 6 ground rules for reinvention listed by Tapscott and Williams, which 3, in your opinion, are most likely to bring about a world envisioned by macroeconomics? Julie, let's take a look at you. Tapscott and Williams discuss 6 ground rules for reinvention. I would choose the following 3. Now, again, say for a final exam, this would be something that I would ask you. Okay, name, which of the following are among the 6 or which are not, stuff like this. Being most in alignment with macroeconomics, empowering the net generation, self-organization, and sharing. The authors discuss their vision. Although all 6 ground rules are important, they essentially want people to be empowered to self-organize, which requires the sharing of information. They discussed how people can come together for positive change globally through the collaboration of ideas. We no longer live in an isolated world. To thrive, we need to collaborate. For example, multiple countries trying to work together to combat climate change. Okay. All right. Okay. And then this is sort of your, these are one of these questions of, in your opinion, what do you think? So there's not necessarily a right or a wrong answer. Again, and I it sounds cynical, but I approach this as an historian, which is where I got my first PhD. I'm less encouraged than Tapscott-Williams about the potential of the technology or even the ground rules that are now enabled by the change in technology to bring about a world envisioned by macroeconomics. And the reason for that is I'm not saying that they're not, these technologies aren't there. I'm not saying that they're not disruptors and rule changers. All true. But rather, where disruption is concerned, you can call it disruption, you can call it revolution. From really the etymology of the word to go around again, revolve. Okay. Here's some things that are tend to be true about disruption and revolution. Number one, people tend to stick with the status quo, and again across the broad spectrum, and until there's a compelling reason to do otherwise. Number two, revolutions are not made typically by majority groups of people getting together. They're more often made by minority groups, small groups of people. Either in some instances they convince large majorities. In most instances, they force change into place, and then the majority adjusts because they have to, because back to rule number one. Now, in the marketplace, so one of the issues that I take with Tapscott-Williams is they apply marketplace rules to social behavior. And although there's a lot of interweaving between the two, there are some distinct differences. I'll give you an example. When Steve Jobs invents the iPod, the thingy that first held all the songs, that was a major disruptor. Now, it was not innovative in the sense that no one had come up with a portable means by which to carry around music. The Walkman was extremely popular and it sold well. Okay. The disadvantage that the Walkman had by way of its function was the cassettes that went into it. The songs that were set on the cassette were set. I mean, unless you made your own mixtape, what you got is what you got. And then even when you selected your own music, getting from one song to another, searching through the whole list was cumbersome. Because you had to fast forward, you had to rewind, and maybe you found the beginning of the song, or maybe you didn't. Okay, so the interface, sometimes if you were trying to hop around songs, the interface took up as much time as the song. So Steve Jobs was like, what if we had a system by which we could store only the songs that we wanted? So there wasn't like, a set of sets, and provide an interface that would allow anybody to skip from one song to another just seamlessly. Okay, that was a disruption. But it was not a disruption because Steve Jobs went out and talked to the people and said, tell me what you really hate about the Walkman. It was a disruption because Steve Jobs hated that about the Walkman, this very small minority. And now Steve Jobs introduces this to the populace, and then the populace makes the shift. So this, this sharing and this openness and things as the modality to the change is not typically how this works out historically. Okay, so that's why. Okay, question number 4. In your opinion, is there a dark side to macroeconomics? Crystal, you went first. Let's take you. In my opinion, there are several dark sides. including the hive mind, collective consciousness, collectivism, and those are sort of shoots off of the same branch. Jobs in a networked economy, how people will get paid, and even privacy concerns. There is potential for mass voluntary collaboration to replace paid employment. There's also potential for fewer prospects of traditional jobs, and more work becomes automated and crowdsourced. Since systems are decentralized, opinions and inputs are not measured the same, leading to inaccurate information and inadequate results. From privacy and security standpoints, oversharing may result in private information becoming vulnerable to hacks and abuses. When workers collaborate, there's also potential for them to feel undervalued, and credit goes to the team and not to the individual, leading to a decrease in employee team morale. Okay, all very true, very, very true by way of cautions and downsides. Okay, and then a number of you had some others. All right. So like something like that on an exam, I might ask you, as an essay question, what would you say are some of the downsides? And that doesn't mean it's an invitation for you just to go, oh, well, let me tell you. No, what the answer that I would be looking for ties back to what you read in the book. All right. So I'm not going to go, read anybody else's stuff, but be aware of how that will be used in the future. Okay. 30 minutes is way long enough for a video. In fact, too long. Everybody have a great week. So coming up through this week, I'm grading your discussion board. So if you have anything that's late, get it in, you maybe get some partial credit, and I'm finishing up your papers. And for you, keep on working on that technology tool. Have a great week, everybody. I think about you. I pray about you, and I'll see you on Canvas. Bye-bye.